Did you have a collaboration with Apple?
Yeah. We did the Quicktake 100.
Thank you.
Which was the first
Motorola.
sub $1,000.
No, Apple Quicktake.
I remember Apple. When we talk about Apple, we have to talk about the time period we're talking about, because the company had a very different nature in 2007 timeframe than it did in 1994. In 94, it was considered the imaging computer. And so professionals that were working with images on computers, which was relatively new, was using Apple for a bunch of reasons. The computer was a little bit more suited to working with large files and things like that. And so they wanted an on-ramp for images. And so that would be naturally a digital camera. Now, digital cameras were still pretty crude and they were very expensive. But if we could make one that would be a color camera that would be reasonably portable, which this was, and I could get camera pictures into my computer, that would basically make my computer more valuable. So they invested in that. Who were the people to build this camera, design it? Kodak. We knew the most about it. They knew that too. They had an active interest in this. They weren't dumb about this. They were thinking about building them themselves, I'm sure. But it turns out that Kodak really, when we were making CCDs, we were making professional cameras. We knew a lot about this, and we had certainly a lot of intellectual property around it. So they came to us, and we built this camera. And if you ever look at the Quicktake 100, you'll notice something interesting about it. The camera looks kind of like a binoculars. And there's a story behind that. I was told by the project manager of that program that the only rule that Kodak management had about this was that, one, Kodak's name wasn't going to be on it, so we didn't have to explain to our customers why we were avoiding film and working with Apple. And two, it couldn't look like a real camera. So they had to make it look like a binoculars. So it's kind of an odd little story, but it sort of shows kind of where we were at that time period, right? So we were working with Apple, but we weren't telling anybody about it.
That's the real shame, really.
You weren't telling anyone about
that.
that.
They weren't telling anyone.
I think that was a very, even at the time, I don't think that was popularly known. Certainly Kodak wasn't saying anything about it.
Yeah.
We didn't want to explain to our existing customers why we were doing stuff like this. Now, technically, we could do it, and certainly there was a broad push to get into this market to know it. And we introduced a camera which looks surprisingly like the Quicktake 100, only like a year later. Okay, part of the DC-40, I think.
Yeah.
Then why did I write?
So we got into the market soon after that, but we had to develop the channels and the marketing arm in order to do that, which was a totally different set of marketing and different customers and different channels. So instead of going to drugstores, we were going through Best Buy and Circuit City.
Yeah.
And so that had to be put in place as well. Okay.
I'm starting to think that I'm actually wrong. So why did I write, I'm right? I wrote that in my notes. I'm starting to see what you mean.
Thank you. Because ultimately, you see, when you've been a softie, like me, from the age of 16 onwards, and then you watch, and you make that decision between Apple and Microsoft, and you go Microsoft way, and you see what Apple Mac are doing and everything else. With imaging, that Apple would have gone with Kodak. Instantly,
Kodak,
without a doubt.
At one time in the early 90s, I think Kodak as a company was the biggest single customer of Apple computers.
There you go.
I remember that isolated fact from my ancient history.
Yeah.
Because I remember getting my first Mac. They gave all of the engineers Macs.
Yeah.
It was kind of unusual at the time.
It was a perfect fit.
Yeah. Well, and so, so you have to take a look at what time period we're talking about.
Indeed.
In order to understand what the actions were on the part of Kodak or some of these other companies as well.
Yeah. If you want some more of this, subscribe. If you like it, press like. But we prefer if you subscribe. All right. And plus, on top of that, if you don't want him in the country anymore, definitely subscribe.
Yeah.